So D23, of course, was this weekend, Disney's fan event, where they, showcase, I think it's like every other year, they showcase new and exciting things happening with the company. And it's always been very useful for Disney to help change the narrative, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, if Disney's not going through a great period, if it can deliver on some exciting announcements at D23, sometimes that can mitigate or distract from those problems entirely. Now, will do all of these things that they announce always come to fruition or come to fruition in the way they were pitched? No. But it helps set the narrative and, again, gets people like me covering it and talking about it, right? So I want to break down each of the kind of different areas of what they announced. So I want to start with their theme parks, because I feel like the announcements here were some of the most exciting, but also some of the most controversial. So Disney announced a slew of theme park additions and subtractions would be the wrong word, but substitutions, right, for currently existing things. So I want to kind of go park by park, kind of look at the announcements, kind of give you my thoughts here. So looking at Disneyland in California, starting off with what is both kind of cool but also kind of creepy at the same time. One of the announcements that they made is that in Disneyland, so in Florida, they have the Hall of Presidents, and it's the whole thing about the presidents. In Disneyland in California, they just have Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. So it's just the Abraham Lincoln portion. Well, they've announced that they're going to be doing a rotating show with Mr. Lincoln, right? So sometimes there'll be Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and then other times it's going to be this animatronic Walt Disney show featuring, you guessed it, an animatronic Walt Disney. I don't even know, talking about what? Talking about his work, his philosophy, which I find just so interesting, and that's why I wanted to start with that. Because on one hand, I've always been a big admirer of Walt Disney, but it also, this move speaks to a weird corporate necromancy, right? Where it's Disney really, we've been talking about this with their intellectual property for years, of trying to basically grave dig their own legacy and history. And now it's gone to the most logical extreme of we're literally going to resurrect, in a sense, our founder in perpetuity to exist always as we want him to. I'm sure it's going to be really impressive. And of course, I like Walt Disney. I like Disney history. So I'm a fan of this on paper, but it's just a really interesting message that they're sending that I don't think they're trying to send, right? And it also, of course, Disney was a really incredible innovator and entertainer, but was also had his own share of problems, right? Both creatively and just in his personal life, right? So, if you're someone that hates Walt Disney for whatever reason, of course you're going to hate this. If you love Walt Disney unconditionally, you're going to love this. Me, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. And it's just interesting that Walt Disney has become such a figure that you are rotating him with Abraham Lincoln, like the guy that perhaps saved the United States in a way. Walt Disney is on that level. At least that's the signal that they are implicitly sending, even if that's not what they're trying to say. And then, of course, also Disneyland will be receiving this November Tiano's Bayou Adventure, which, of course, is the reskin of Splash Mountain. That's been getting really good reviews for the Florida iteration that opened, I think it was like a month or two ago. If only it worked. I have been reading people complaining it's always down, it's always broken. And even when it's running, certain animatronics won't be working, right? Which makes sense because from what I've seen the videos of, it's a very impressive animatronic palooza. But, Disneyland will be able to expect that coming in November. Across the street, so of course there's Disneyland, but as part of Disneyland Resort, there's also the other theme park, Disney California Adventure. And that's kind of where Disney will drop all of the stuff that it wants to bring to California but doesn't know where to put it. So Disneyland California Adventure, or DCA, if you will, is going to be receiving an Avatar ride, right? Based off of James Cameron, from the twisted mind of James Cameron. It's gonna be a new ride. Notably, it's not gonna just be a clone of one of the 2 rides in Animal Kingdom in Florida. So that's gonna be exciting. There's also gonna be a Coco ride based off, of course, of the Pixar film Coco. And I think most notably is there's going to be a Marvel Avengers ride called Avengers Infinity Defense. It's going to be like this multiversal adventure with our heroes trying to stop King Thanos. Like, it's like a multiversal version of him where Thanos actually won, I guess. Which doesn't really make sense because he did win. And then we beat him at a later date, but in any case. And there's also be Stark Flight Lab, which is... I don't know how to describe it. It's like this roller coaster that is almost like an arm. Like, remember those robotic arms from Iron Man? Well, it's gonna be this thing, but like you're gonna be in the arm. It's gonna be like these seats, and it's gonna kind of spin you around and stuff like that, right? So that's all the updates at Disneyland, and I'm gonna kind of try to move through these semi quickly, and I'm gonna do that to make a point. I'm not trying to rush through these necessarily. Going across the country to Florida, Walt Disney World. The 3 of the 4 parks are getting some major additions. Epcot is only getting like a new lounge or something. Epcot is not getting anything new. So if you're a big Epcot fan, you might be upset, but then also Epcot is being untouched, right? And that's a big issue that some people are having with these additions. So in Magic Kingdom, they are getting rid of the riverfront kind of body of water that was along Frontierland and Liberty Square. And they're basically turning it into a Cars-themed area in Frontierland. Because I guess since Cars takes place in, not New Mexico or wherever it is, and it has, it's like the Grand Canyon, that kind of topography or geography, Disney Imagineers, or really I should say Disney Corporate probably went, you know what? We have similar environmental pieces in Frontierland, so maybe we can make a Cars related thing, even though Frontierland is all about the Wild West and the frontier. But that won't stop Disney for trying to make Cars work. So people are not happy for 2 reasons. One, because it feels such like a perversion of the theming, which I don't know why people are upset. Not because they shouldn't be upset, but Disney has basically given up on the idea of theming years ago. So I'm not sure why people are like, oh, I can't believe they're going to do that. I can believe it. It makes complete sense from their point of view. But this is gonna, so that's one reason why they're upset. But then number 2, it's not just adding something a bit gauche, if you will, to something that they care about. It's also getting rid of something, right? So again, they're getting rid of that body of water, and a lot of people feel, it speaks to something Walt Disney really wanted. I think that's something from Disneyland originally, like this like kind of Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer riverboat experience. Like, you can go on that boat that goes around the lake, right? So people feel like it's kind of a perversion, again, of Disney's, of like the spirit of something Walt Disney really would have wanted. And also just, it also, I don't have any sources, unfortunately, but I've been scrolling, I've been very interested to see what people on Twitter have been saying. And a lot of people have said, a theme park, the way Disney does it, should be more than the sum of its parts. And to Disney Corporate, they see that area of land that is more or less being unused, quote unquote, as wasted opportunity. But what they don't understand is that something like that sets a mood. It sets a tone, right? It's not, you don't need every square. How can we maximize every dollar for every square inch? Sometimes things are there to help set a mood, and they're not meant to have an attraction on it, right? And that was a really interesting point that people brought up. But the big announcement for Magic Kingdom is that they're going to be incorporating a Villains Land. So if you follow my channel, I did a whole video about what a 5th Walt Disney World park, its own park, could be. And I had said this as one of them. And it wasn't unique to me. People have been talking about the idea of a Villains Land for years. Decades even. It is finally happening. Again, it's almost kind of like too little, too late. Like it's like you finally got around to doing it, but I feel like people have kind of moved on from wanting that. But it's not going to be its own park. It's going to be a land within Magic Kingdom. I'm not quite sure where it's going to be. I don't know if we have that info yet. We might, and I'm just ignorant about that, so forgive me. But it will be interesting to see them finally. Like, that's a big swing. I got to give them credit. That's a big swing, a whole new land in Magic Kingdom. They've expanded lands in Magic Kingdom, but the last true new land was Toontown, and then they got rid of it, and they made it part of New Fantasyland, which is just Fantasyland Plus, just more. So this is our first true new land in Magic Kingdom in forever. So that is kind of exciting. Going down the street now to Animal Kingdom, they are going to be replacing Dinoland USA, rest in peace, with a Tropical Americas section. They're not replacing Dinoland USA wholesale right away. They're going to kind of do it in phases. So the very popular dinosaur ride is still going to be intact for the time being. Though eventually the area will include an Indiana Jones ride, which notably is distinct from the Disneyland Indiana Jones ride. It's going to be a brand new adventure. That's always what the marketing likes to say. It's also going to feature a themed area called Pueblo Esperanza, which is like an Encanto themed area. And it will feature a Casita Madrigal attraction, right? So I believe that might be some kind of ride based off of, the magical house in Encanto. And what might be the most important change of Walt Disney Park, a decades-long attraction is getting replaced. And you would think there would be uproar. But I don't see any uproar. In fact, I see celebration. And that's because it's tough to be a bug. The awful 4D experience that has been inside the Tree of Life at Animal Kingdom, I think since the park opened, is being replaced with a Zootopia equivalent called Zootopia Better Zoogether. With a pun, right? Of course, it's tough to be a bug. It's awful. It's horrifying for children. Not that it's super scary, but just very sensory and loud and scary. Weird smells, awful 3D technology, and it's the one where they stab you. There's parts where there's like little sharp bugs and they kind of poke you in the back, but I have back problems. I have a very sensitive back, so it literally felt like someone punched me in the lower back. So I don't think anyone is going to be upset with that change, right? But what was causing some concern, right? So a change that they're going to make in Hollywood Studios, formerly MGM Studios, which is what it is in my heart. They're going to be adding a whole new land. You have Toy Story Land. You've seen Toy Story Land. You've seen Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Now it's time for Monstropolis, a Monsters, Inc. themed land, if you will, based, of course, on the Monsters, Inc. franchise, which I actually find kind of cool. I love the Monsters, Inc. movies, plural, and I love that world. But this is going to be an entire land, which I feel kind of strange about, and I don't really like how Hollywood Studios has kind of become this place where it's just like they're not even trying to couch stuff in Imagineering and brand new adventure. It's literally like, we have a whole section just for Toy Story. So if your kids love Toy Story, go over there. And if you guys like Star Wars, there's a whole Star Wars land. As opposed to having something that's a little more integrated. But, Bob Iger isn't watching these videos, so this isn't going to change. So Monstropolis, it's going to feature a suspended roller coaster based on the door chase scene, which you should be able to see here in the photos. Which is really great. Again, it's one of those things that it's like you watch that movie in 2001 and go, oh, this is so perfect. It's almost like they designed it to be a Disney World roller coaster. So I'm surprised it's taken them this long. I think I read it's going to be the first suspended roller coaster at a Disney park. At least at Disney World or something like that. There was a lot of concern about, there's only so much real estate. So it's like, is it going to be a whole new patch of land beyond Hollywood Studios that they're going to build into, or is it going to replace something that already exists? There was a lot of concern that they were going to replace the Muppet Courtyard, which has already been shrunken dozens of times, which at one time was a major part of Hollywood Studios, was like this Muppet Courtyard, whatever it was called. Thankfully, it is not going to be replacing the Muppets. It's going to be replacing the animation building, that, for better or for worse, nobody gives a shit about anymore. So, luckily, the Muppets Vision 3D is safe for now. Also, at Hollywood Studios, there's going to be a new Mandalorian and Grogu adventure for the Star Wars ride Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. That's the one where it's like a video game, you get to like drive it yourself. Which makes no sense because Mandalorian has nothing to do with the Millennium Falcon. That is just cross promotion for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie that they're going to be doing. And you heard me right, theatrical movie. I'll talk about that in the next piece when we talk about the film and TV stuff. Just a couple quick hits here. Disneyland Paris, they have their second park on that property. It's currently called Walt Disney Studios Park. It's going to be renamed Disney Adventure World. It's often been derided as being very lazy, so I think they're trying to revamp it. They're going to be bringing the World of Frozen attraction from Hong Kong Disneyland. They're also going to be bringing like a Lion King area with a Lion King attraction. It looks like from the concept art, it's going to be like a flume ride. But strangely, it's based off of the live action version of the Lion King. And I'm going to put live action in quotes, of course, because it's not that it's live action, it's just hyper-realistic computer-generated imagery, and for all intents and purposes, we're just going to call it live action remake, right? So, notably, there has not been a Lion King ride, at least in the United States. Maybe they've done something overseas. The only thing has been a Lion King, they had the show in Animal Kingdom, and they had like a little movie about the environment in Epcot and like near the Living with the Land stuff. So it's like we're finally giving you a Lion King ride, but it's going to be themed around the live action versions. So what? They're just going to be like hyper realistic lion animatronics? Like what's the value in that? Like if you want to see lions, go to Animal Kingdom. And I guess this is in Paris, but still, you get my point. Like what's the value in that? But Disney really feels like that's the direction to go, and ultimately they're the ones with the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. Just a couple quick notes here. Shanghai Disneyland is getting a Spider-Man roller coaster. Hong Kong Disneyland, across the little, I wonder what that body of water is between mainland China and Hong Kong. Anyway, Hong Kong Disneyland's also getting a Spider-Man themed ride in its Stark Expo area of Tomorrowland. And then finally, their cruise line, they're getting 4 new ships, and I think one of the new ships is going to have a Moana show, and another's going to have a Hercules show. So they're really leaning into the parks. I think there was just a report recently, like when they did their quarterly earnings, that theme park attendance has kind of lagged. They might be thinking to themselves, it's because we don't have more IP in the parks. And my answer is no. It's just that it's ridiculously expensive. My fiance Viviana and I went about a year ago, and we went for a week, and the whole trip, with food, with the travel, was like $6,000. It was insane. So that's the reason. That's the reason why attendance is so low. But I can't get mad at any of these necessarily, because more attractions is always good, again, for crowds. Because the issue isn't with Disney World being busy, it's just that there's too many people and not enough stuff to do, especially depending on the park. Like Hollywood Studios has a surprising lack of things to do. So if you have a really high attendance day, you may just have a lot of people stumbling around, waiting in lines. So any new attractions are always welcome. But if you're noticing a trend here, is that every single ride or new attraction that I mentioned is based off of an existing Disney property. And of course, this is nothing new. I don't think Disney has made an attraction that was wholly original, probably since Expedition Everest in Animal Kingdom. With the exception, there's like a, not Haunted Mansion, but like kind of a Haunted Mansion variant. And I think it's Shanghai Disneyland. That is, I think, holds the title of like the last original concept. But if you know anything about Disney history, especially like Disney theme park history, is that, you know, these rides or these parks obviously had a healthy dosing of, you know, synergy. Of course, you had the Dumbo and the teacups and stuff, right? But the big draws Like, Disney wasn't interested necessarily or solely interested in just making the movies into theme park attractions. Pirates of the Caribbean was not based on anything. It's inspired by just pirate lore and iconography, but it's not being made because they're like, oh, our focus group says that people really like this property, so we should make a ride so people will come to the park and then ride the ride and then buy merch for the thing and then watch more of the thing on Disney Plus. It makes them want to come back, and that was never a concern. Haunted Mansion was just an original idea. Splash Mountain was based off of Song of the South, but very, very loosely. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Space Mountain, Expedition Everest, Test Track. There's Ellen's Universe of Energy or whatever it was, right? These are all the Great Movie Ride, which of course was based off of a bunch of films, but it was about celebrating the medium. It's not that you can't have attractions based off of IP. It's just become very clear, and has been clear for some time now, that all they're really, really interested in, at least at the corporate level, is creating experiences based off properties people already know to get people to come. What they don't understand is that people want to go to Disney anyway. That is such a powerful brand and has spent, since at least Disneyland, what was that, 70-ish years now, almost 70 years next year, of just high-quality experiences. I was reading an interesting article, and I think they summed it up perfectly, where it was that older Disney attractions, they were low budget, low production value, but high creativity. And now it's almost reversed, where a lot of the rides, even the best ones, feel like assignments. They feel like corporate assignments. They feel like corporate Disney went to Imagineering and said, we want a Guardians of the Galaxy ride themed around the Tower of Terror, or we're going to reskin the Tower of Terror. Figure it out. And the Imagineers do the best they can. And speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, not Mission Breakout, but a Cosmic Rewind, is quite possibly one of my favorite new attractions. One of my favorite attractions at Disney World. I think it's an incredible attraction. It's the Teacups meets Rock and Roller Coaster meets Space Mountain all rolled up into one. But at the end of the day, it was an assignment that no one walked into work going, I think we should do this. It was more, we want a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Figure it out. And it's a shame that the corporate Disney doesn't understand that they have the cultural cachet and trust to do things that aren't based on intellectual property. Again, not saying that you can't have that stuff. And again, some of the most beloved rides are based off of these properties. But I feel like there needs to be a healthy balance. And right now, it's like all calories, no protein, no nutrition. It's just all calories. And I think it's going to hurt Disney in the long run. But people have been saying, I'm sure I could find an article from 20 years ago complaining about the new attractions from 20 years ago, saying the same exact thing, right? So I'm gonna, I'm humble enough to understand that it's not like everything was perfectly great until I became critically conscious as a media consumer. I'm not saying that. But this particular moment feels particularly cynical in its panderiness. Even if these individual rides, like this Monsters, Inc. ride, like this Encanto ride, even if they're phenomenal in a vacuum, but the theme parks should be more than the sum of their parts.